Welcome everybody to the Adapt podcast. We've got another episode today for you. Very exciting one. Massive privilege to have Mo Daya as a guest. Mo is the founder of SQ², which stands for Social Intelligence. And I'd love for you to just say good day to the audience and just tell me a little bit about SQ² and how that all began.
Yeah, sure. I think first and foremost, the privilege is mine, mate. Thank you so much for having me on. I've been excited to do this with you for a little while. I know we've spoken about it, doing it, which I haven't had the chance to yet. So, yeah, thank you. So I founded SQ² in the early parts of 2023, and we help business leaders and entrepreneurs develop their influence, persuasion, communication, negotiation, and authentic leadership skills. And we do that in one of three ways. So our primary offering is our intensive coaching courses, which we do with different business leaders around town. And then we have a workshop-based offering, which is more geared towards junior and senior leadership teams within businesses and SMEs. And the last one is our more long-term leadership program delivery offering, which we tailor over 3, 6 or 9 months to meet the particular needs of a business.
Okay. Well, I'm grateful that you took the time to come and chat. I know how busy you are. We just want to do a shout out to the location that we're in, Refuge Small Bar in Subiaco. Big shout out to Dave, the owner, who's given us a space.
It's beautiful.
It's nice and quiet. It's a great setting. We've been supporters of Refuge for a long time. They're a local SME. They look after SME brewers around the state. So it's something that we passionately believe in. And you and I, we like this place ourselves. So it's a special memories for us.
That's exactly right. Sitting out there, listening to the train go past. It's pretty special, actually. Yeah, I love the setup. It's really nice.
Yeah. So thanks, Dave. You're a bloody champion for giving us the space. I'm very grateful. I want to go deep on the founder's journey with you today.
Sure.
Before we go there, I always like to just get to know the human being in front of me a little bit and give the audience a chance to get to know you. So I normally ask 2 questions. First one, what's one of your favourite indulgences? And then another one, a favourite life hack right now. Something simple that makes your life easier.
Yeah, sure. Indulgence. Let me think. I'd have to say it's probably sauna and cold plunge.
Cool.
Yeah.
So that's an indulgence, not a hack.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay,
It's an indulgence.
Why is that?
Because I really enjoy the solitude of doing that and the challenge. I've done it for a few years now. I know it's all like the rage now. I mean, I was doing it during COVID and before COVID, so I really enjoyed, just the challenge of going into really, really cold water after sauna. So it's that hot and cold, juxtaposition. And I just love it. Sitting in the sauna quietly on your own, trying to, just take a moment from life, out of life. And then that whack you get from sitting in 4-degree water. I really love it.
How long can you last in the 4 degrees?
When I first started, I reckon it wouldn't have been 5 seconds, and now I'm probably at about 3 minutes. Yeah, it's hard, but it's really rewarding. I really love it.
And static water or moving water? Because there's a big difference.
There is a big difference. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I can see you've done your research. So I started off I actually started off with just the shower, like just turning it on to cold as far cold as I could in the middle of winter, and I just couldn't hack it. But then over time, static water, and now I'm at a point where it's moving cold water coming out of a chiller, like tailor-made by a cold plunge company, et cetera, et cetera.
Cool.
Yeah, it's cool.
Lots of evidence for the advantages of that.
Definitely. I think the mental advantages probably far outweigh all the physical stuff.
Yeah. Cool. Life hack. Favorite life hack right now? Yeah. Can't say coffee.
It might sound weird, but I reckon win the morning.
Explain.
If you can win the morning, you set yourself up to win the day. And if you win enough days, you win the week. And if you win enough weeks, you win the month, and so on and so forth.
Practically, what does it mean for you to win the morning?
I guess as a dad, a business owner, just so much going on in life, I just find if I win that morning and I get my morning done right, so work out, whatever it is, like, do the vacuuming. If that's a thing, tick, 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 tick. I find if I win the morning, I'm so much more well prepared for the day. And I think just mentally it gives me that, whether it's real or not, I'm not sure, but I just feel like I have an advantage and I won a bit of momentum probably as well, yeah. But I just feel like I have, being a very, I'm not afraid to say, a competitive person. I like the fact that if my day starts at 4:30 or 5 o'clock, I just love that feeling of knowing that I'm probably half an hour ahead of where everyone else is.
Yep.
And I just get when things get tough, I just know I've already done a whole heap of stuff that morning, and I'm just ahead. I'm good for the day. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Okay. Can you think of any? I'm obsessed with this stuff anyway, so that's why I want to go there. But can you think of something that's happened in the last 4 weeks, which you go, that's because I won the morning, that's made you overcome a hurdle or push through a barrier or something through the day that you can attribute to winning the morning?
I think at the moment I'm really focused on getting up, and it doesn't matter how I feel. I just know that I'm going to get a workout in the morning, because it's something that I guess slipped away for a long time for me when I had, I've got a little girl, and that slipped away for a few years, and I lost that sharpness and clarity that I get from doing something really hard in the morning. And just, I'm quite a morning person anyway, so I just find that I just have that edge. It's hard to explain, but I know, I'll come to your question in a second, but I just have that real clarity, and I know where I'm headed for that day. And that gives me a sense of purpose. So when I do come up against something, I'm like, no, we're going to be okay, because I've got that calmness. And a really good example of that is, I think a lot of coaches face this issue where they come up against, I was in a workshop with about 18 participants, and just that one participant who just wanted to push the
Resist,
yeah, absolutely. And just having that ability just to stay cool, calm, and collected, despite all the questions and the pushing, and that's how I run my sessions anyway. But just having that clarity to go, it's all good. Like, we're okay. We're going to push forward. This is how we're going to do it. All right, I'll answer your question, and then now we're back, headed in the direction that we need to head in. That's where I find, when things get tough, because you've done the work earlier in the day, for whatever reason, I just find I have that extra edge.
Yeah, awesome. Speaking of edge, because you're going to need it, being a founder and a business owner, that's where I want to spend a lot of time today, but it makes sense for me to start with the journey that's brought you to here. So, a couple of decades before today, and maybe let's go all the way back to heritage and family, and then just give us a recap of the last few decades that's gotten us to SQ Squared.
Yeah, sure. Wow. Okay, going to go back that far.
Yeah.
So my parents came out here after the Lebanese Civil War in '88. I was 4, and they were Lebanese immigrants. They chose Perth for whatever reason, didn't choose Sydney or Melbourne, where most other Lebanese immigrants tended to migrate towards. And I think if I look back at my early years, I saw 2 parents who both worked their absolute asses off to give their kids their number one priority, which was education, and safety. And if I was to also reflect a little bit, I would say that my parents probably face the same dilemmas that a lot of other immigrant families face, in that they've come to a foreign country where English is not their first language, and they have to adapt, and they have to try and find a way to prosper, not having certain skills. Like my parents, English was not their first language, it was Arabic. Very well educated people, but just English is not their first language. And I just remember having conversations with my dad as I was sort of growing up in my sort of from that 5 to 10-year-old age group. And I remember him saying, like, just be quiet and watch, and just like people will tell you everything that you need to know by just listening and watching. And I think that probably came down to their inability to communicate well. So they relied on their understanding of body language and people. And I think that was seminal for me. Like that was a really important stage. My parents did jobs where even though they were educated, they couldn't get into the industries that they'd trained for because they couldn't get their qualifications I guess, approved or recognised. Yeah. So they just did different jobs, and their aim was always to give their kids education. And then all of a sudden one day, my dad just sat down and said, look, I think we're going to go home. We're going to go back to Lebanon. And it's funny because you remember those days, like my wife would say that my memory is awful, but there are days in my life that I just remember like really clearly. And that would be one of those days. And I hated it. I was 12, I think. And we went back to a place where now it was me that couldn't speak the language.
Oh, that's tough.
Yeah.
Back to where you're from and you can't converse.
Yeah. And the values are so different.
Yeah, right.
The people are different. Like I was just this quintessential Australian kid who, like back then, like wearing like fat pants was a thing, right? Like big rapper jeans.
MC Hammer pants.
Pretty much. Like NWA was huge.
Oh, right.
Yeah, that period.
Yeah.
And I remember just being
Big baggy jeans.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I was just like, what are we doing here? Like, what am I doing here? And got a really good education. Went to a really nice international school. Everything was fine, but I just didn't fit. And I always had this thought in my head that didn't matter what was going to happen, I was always going to come back. And so, again, I remember that very, very vividly. I finished year 11 of high school, which over there, so year 11 there is when you finish school. And I sat down with my dad and I said, I'm going to go. I've tried it. It's cool. Like, it works for you guys, but this is not for me. And he said, yep, I get it. Completely understand. You got to make your own way in this world. And
how old were you there?
I was 17.
Okay.
And he said, okay, no worries. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'll book you a airplane ticket, and I'll ring your auntie who lived here in Perth at the time, and I'll ring her and I'll see if you can go and stay with her. And then my dad's health deteriorated. So in my family we have a hereditary condition where we have kidney issues, and my dad got quite sick, and all those plans just sort of went up in the air. And everyone thought, no, I'm not going anywhere, and they stay here. And I said, Dad, I'm going. And so on the way to the airport, swing past my dad's hospital bed.
Oh, wow.
And he whips out his wallet and he gives me $100. And he says, that's yours. Like, good luck. I wish you all the best. We'll always be here. Whatever you need, you let me know. Good luck. I jumped on that plane and I was 17. I came back and it was the best decision I'd ever made.
Okay, I need to unpack that. What
It's not your
Because I
quintessential
know
story,
you,
right?
I know you for a long time. I know your commitment to family and family values, all that sort of stuff. So I know what it would have taken for you to still go. What was going on in your mind that got you to be able to go past Dad's hospital bed and still say goodbye and jump on that plane? That's huge.
Yeah. I knew my dad was going to be okay. I knew we were going to be okay. It was just a hurdle along the road, and I just needed to make a decision.
Yeah.
And my parents are super supportive, loving, caring people that will always put their kids first. It's been the way it's been in my household for like from as far back as I can remember. We may not have had like financial wealth, but we had like love wealth, I guess. You know, we really care for each other. I've got 2 younger brothers as well, so the 5 of us are really tight. And I just remember having a conversation with my mum. She said, "You just like this is your time. Like I think we've done everything that we can."
So there was enough support from the family to go, you need to do this.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
Most definitely. Like on my dad's side, I think he's got 9 brothers and sisters, and on my mum's side, there's 5. So all up, there's 14. And when my dad got quite unwell, I had a conversation with my uncle, and he just said, "No, your dad will want you to go. Like your dad went. It's now your time to go." And my dad wasn't that much older than me from memory when he came to Australia. So I think they always knew deep down I was just going to go and forge my own path, whatever that was, wherever it was. Yeah. But the Middle East was not a part of that plan.
It sounds like you had an example modeled for you, which maybe gave you the courage to also do it. If your dad made such a big decision when he was a young man, similar age, to go, and here you are a few decades later, and you've got that fork in the road. You know his story. You had to decide stay or go. Did it give you courage or confidence to go, given what you know of your dad's story, or did that not play into it?
I think I was probably too young to really step it out like that. But yeah, I think the premise of what you're saying is probably true. I always look at my dad's example as someone who, you know, lived heaps of different lives. You know, and he always looked for experiences over money.
The parallels are just firing at me right now. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think like my dad, I know it's probably going a little bit deep, but I think my dad just accepts life for what it is. It's a journey, and you're on that journey. Yeah. And you can either accept that there's this journey that you need to go on, or you can fight it. And if you fight it, well, you lose some of those marbles that you have to potentially enjoy it. And I think that sort of goes towards his life principles, I think. Okay.
So you're 17, you're back in Australia.
Yeah.
Now what? Now I know that a drive to education, to knowledge, and a drive to life experiences is important to you and has been prevalent for you. So what's the next decade look like?
Yeah.
So I met you about a decade after that.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, that's right. I think it was definitely education. I think this drive to get a university education is probably a thread that permeates probably all of our lives to a certain degree. Because let's make Australia is the best country on earth. Like, you can come here and in a decade or less be successful. You just need the attitude and the desire and the focus and the drive. Now, I just chose education. So yeah, I got into uni. I had to repeat. I had to do year 12. Mm-hmm. Went to university, went to business school, because that's what, you know, every good Lebanese boy does.
Sure.
And then decided...
Bachelor of Commerce?
I did an international business degree.
Uh-huh.
And then I did that because I think at the time I needed security and stability and the well-trodden path. and then I stayed.
Okay. When you had to make that decision to go and study what you studied, and you've got this heritage of that's what we do, but you also had to think future of what you want to do with your life.
Yeah.
How much did that play into your decision to do the course that you did?
Not in the early days.
The degree.
No. In the early days, no, it didn't factor in at all. I was like, that's the trodden path. I'm gonna follow it. Because there's safety in that, right? Yeah. There's safety in that. Like at this stage, I haven't even considered there's no entrepreneur. There's no thinking around, that entrepreneurial mindset. It's just there's a path. I need to follow it because I need some stability right now because I'm here on my own.
Because I know what comes later in life, which is a divergence from this particular point. So that's why I'm interested in what's going through your mind.
Yeah.
There's less future planning, more this is the done thing and I'll follow that way until I discover my next step.
Definitely, because I think there's also there's stability.
Yeah.
There's safety and stability.
Yep.
So would have been.
What about, I don't want to make assumptions here, I'd rather hear from you. What about your life to that point has made it so important to have safety and stability? Because you've said it a couple of times now. So there was really a big motivator for you to keep that in your life.
I would say it's probably, I think we call it intergenerational trauma, call it whatever you want. But it's this desire for to know that I actually know what I'm going to be doing tomorrow, rather than what probably more than half the world knows and understands. And having seen what my parents went through up until that point, and I guess their outlook on the world and the way they saw the world, and they had an opportunity to go from a very volatile environment to a very stable environment. So there are all those things happening at that moment in time. I don't know if that answers your question.
You restated stability and safety and security a couple of times, rather than risk and adventure. Yeah. At that moment in your life, you made a decision where you knew there was safety and stability, and I wanted to understand from your perspective, what was the thing that at that time it was important for you to pick that?
Sure, yeah, okay, right.
I mean, again, I can surmise a lot from your journey and the fact that you're now back in Australia and you're forging your own path.
Yeah.
There's a lot of unknowns. Absolutely. And a bit of stability would be advantageous.
Yeah, I think if I was to reflect on that period, I'd already taken a lot of risks, coming back on your own. Yeah. No one, I had an auntie who moved interstate after about a year, so I was on my own. Living on your own, on campus, studying. No one had forged that path in my family previously, really, particularly in Australia. So maybe there was a risk mitigation strategy in there as well. It's I've taken a lot of risks up until this point. How about we just do the safe, secure thing for a little while, get that.
Something to fall back on in case it all goes to...
Yeah, absolutely. And that was that at that point, I would say that was you study, you get good grades, you get a degree, and you just need a part-time job on the side. That little equation at that point in time was probably exactly what I needed.
Okay. So get the degree.
Get a degree.
Moving on to jobs. What came next?
No, I stayed. So I did the degree that I needed to do, and then I did the degree that I wanted to do.
Which was?
So I did a politics and international relations studies degree.
Why did you want to do that?
Because I was fascinated with politics and people, and I always have been.
Politics and people?
Yeah.
Pull that apart for me.
So I've always been fascinated with what makes society tick, why people make decisions, how democracies work, how autocracies work, how society works.
Where do you think that comes from?
Because I think I'd seen a few different variations of it. When we lived in the Middle East, we'd travelled heaps. We'd gone to different countries. We'd been in Syria, long before it is what people think it is now. We travelled around the Middle East with my parents because that was one of the things I really wanted to do. So I'd seen all these different ways of living, and I was I was fascinated by it. And then people, And I think that just comes to, I think I've always had that innately. I don't actually know where it comes from.
Okay. So I did politics and international relations.
Yep.
Had another couple of years on top.
Yeah.
Yep. And then what?
And then the GFC comes.
What did that mean for you?
So graduate.
No jobs.
Yeah, no jobs. No graduate programs.
2 shiny degrees and
Like,
no job.
all those like beautiful, amazing opportunities you're meant to get.
Yeah,
like
all of that
after you've done
safety
all
and
the
the
hard work.
security that you've just
Absolutely.
banked. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I think, and again, I just remember that day vividly, Gabe. I was about to sit my final exam. I can't remember what the unit was. Sitting on level 1 of the library at Murdoch University, and I was like, "What am I going to do?"
Yeah.
So I'm getting all these emails saying, as a result of the economic climate, this graduate program is closing. We're not taking applications. And I just thought to myself, all right, well, there's got to be a solution here.
Yeah.
What do I do? And I went, you know what? It'll be okay. I'll be able to do something. I've got to this point. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen. It could be way worse, right? I could be back in the Middle East.
Yep.
And the opportunities are there are no opportunities for people. It doesn't matter if you have a master's degree or a doctorate, you're going to be working at Macca's. So I thought, okay, it'll come up. And I just remember reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I remember him saying something along the lines of, rather than worrying about collecting money, go and collect experiences and the money will come.
Yeah. Because I know that book holds a special place in your heart and in your educational journey.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now you're in this another decision point. You say you remember it so vividly. I think there's a couple of things in the last few decades that a lot of people know. I know exactly where I was when this happened.
Yeah.
9/11, one of them.
Yeah.
GFC, COVID.
Yeah, absolutely.
I remember exactly my GFC moment as well. Closed my second grown-up business, closed it because of the GFC, and then took a job, put food on the table. 3 months in, bang, redundant.
So Tasmania at the time?
Yep. And here I am, worst economy Tassie's ever seen, no jobs.
Yeah. So how'd you deal with it?
I got lucky. There was an opportunity to go and do postgrad study.
Yeah.
Jumped at that. Ended up doing my master's in business, and at the same time, just found a job, low-level job, found it, took it, bring in something, and was a well-aligned organisation, and I built back up from there. So, yeah. But now, back to you. All will be revealed why he's turned the tables on me like that. Okay, so decision point. Something will come. You're in the best country in the world. Opportunity is here. You just have to find it.
Yeah.
What did you do?
I started thinking about how I was going to collect experiences. And I thought, do I go overseas? Do I go to Southeast Asia? Do I just sort of sell all my stuff and just, put whatever I've got in a backpack and, load some stuff up on a debit card and go? Or, what do I do? Where are my advantages? What am I good at? And I just saw an ad for WA Police. I was like, you know what? That is going to teach me a thing or two about people and life. And I just applied. I think I spent a day on the application. And it was back in the day where I think you had to go to the recruitment centre and get an actual form. You had to fill it out. I just remember being worried about some crazy. I was like, oh, what if they can't read my handwriting?
What year was this? What year did you put in?
It was 2008.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And it took about 3 months to hear back.
Yep.
And then they went, yeah, you're in. And I was like, oh my God, thank God, because I've got nothing left.
Got nothing else. Yeah.
Yeah. And the emails kept coming in. I was like, I'll put that application in. We'll see what happens. But all these emails kept coming back in. Thank you for your graduate application. Due to the circumstances, graduate program's closed. Not taking on any more people. And so I think it was the 10th of October, 2009 that I started at the police academy.
09 in the police.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Yeah.
And then how long were you in law enforcement?
15 years.
In WA Police?
With a period as an AFP special constable and working at a couple of other different organisations within the law enforcement community. But 15 years.
15 years.
Yeah.
Okay. And so just give me the highlights of your law enforcement career. Sure. And then I'll sort of take to a couple of...
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So I reckon I did 12 months in a van, just doing different,
First responder. Job comes up, sirens on, here we go. Nino.
You 1 minute you're rescuing a cat out of a tree, the next minute you're separating to, a domestic violence victim from a perpetrator.
Mm-hmm. Where were you on the beat? This is some real rich detail I want to know.
I worked in Fremantle. Yeah. I went to Fremantle. Yeah. Because I was like, I'll learn heaps there. There's nightlife, there's suburbia, there's low socioeconomic, there's Mosman Park, there's Applecross, and then there's Willoughby.
Yeah, wow.
So I threw myself into it, and it was just such a culture shock for me. I'd never seen that.
Uh-huh.
I'd never seen that side of people before, the good and the bad.
Ain't that the truth?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Fremantle, your first beat. Mine was Narrogin, by the way.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
Yeah.
But 6 weeks on the boost bus and then straight to country.
Why?
Two things. I'm a country boy. Grew up in the bush in Africa. Yeah. Always loved country community, regional farms. So there was a big pull there. Yeah. From conversations, I heard that the cross-section of experience you can have as a country police officer as opposed to a metropolitan, you just get exposed to more. So that was appealing. Yeah. And I'm an immigrant in this country as well, and I grew up in Africa with and understanding some of the native African history and culture. Yeah. I didn't know much about Australian native history and culture, and I really wanted to.
Yes.
And I knew that Narrogin was a very diverse town and diverse population, and I thought it's an opportunity to go and learn. Just same again. I just go. There was two options, that and Port Hedland, and that's the one I got. So that's where I ended up.
So all the stuff in the back of the car, like 6 hour drive to Narrogin. Here you are.
Yep.
6 hours. Yeah.
3.
Oh, sorry, my bad. Yeah, it's 3 hours. Yeah.
Okay, Fremantle on the beat, and then through your next postings and.
Yeah, and then from there, I was at the police academy. I was doing, I can't remember what it was, and I met the head of the counter-terrorism unit, and he just said, "Oh, hey, heard a bit about you. Would you be interested in coming and working at our CT unit, our counter-terrorism unit?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, absolutely. I've had enough of the beat."
Yeah.
Fighting people on a Saturday night and putting people on the back of putting people on the back of the paddy wagon gets real old real quick. And I went, yeah, absolutely. They said, okay, finish off your probation, and when you do that, give me a call. Finish probation, call, hey, I finished. Yeah. And I think, we joke about it now, but I think at the time I was the youngest ever CT operator in Australia.
How old were you?
I would have been 27, 28, but experience-wise, I was the youngest. I was 18 months out of the police academy.
Yeah.
So, and that was an experience.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you've had extraordinary life experience, but policing experience very narrow go into such a specialised field as counter-terrorism.
Absolutely. Like a real, at the time, a very elite bunch of very experienced operators. And
you faced some resistance because of that.
I did.
Right?
I did, yeah. Yeah. And I think it's I think we've spoken about it, but those first 6 to 9 months were just were pretty hard, because I thought the world was like rosy and everyone was there to help you and everything was going to be okay, and it was I was going to walk into a really welcoming environment, and it wasn't the case. But I think people that were working there at the time had spent so many years trying to get there, and then they had this young buck come in who was 10, 15 years younger than them, and having the door slightly ajar for him was really sort of ran up against their value systems.
Yeah.
Because they're all about experience.
Yep.
You do your time, you go from one spot to the next, to the next, to the next, and at some point you become somehow, some way, some shape or form, you get the skills good enough to work in that space. But I think in hindsight, I was one of the first people to walk into that environment and for them to realise that it's actually about having a skill set that you either innately possess or that you pick up in life, which helps you in that world.
Do you think you brought some disruption to the way of thinking there at the time?
Definitely, yeah.
We could do a whole episode just on that, but we need to get to your founder's journey.
Yeah.
Okay, next.
Yeah.
The next couple of postings biggest lesson, most valuable lesson you learned whilst working counter-terrorism.
Yeah. I learnt that it's all about motivation.
Please explain. I know what you mean, but for the listeners.
That you or I might not understand why someone does something, like they commit a particular type of crime, but if you can break that down and understand the person, you'll understand why they were motivated to conduct that behaviour.
And what benefit is that to you to understand their motivation?
Because if you can understand someone's motivations, you can potentially, a lot of the time, you'll be able to predict their behaviour.
Cowhich
which I feel like we're going to come back to.
We are going to come back to for sure. Okay, so next, after.
Yeah, so whilst I was there, I was really lucky, man. I got the opportunity to do essentially like a human source course, which is being able to recruit and manage human sources or informants. Mm-hmm. So that's how that law enforcement space works. Yep. I got the opportunity to work with someone really special who'd already worked in that world for probably 20, 25 years.
Yep.
And he just took me under his wing and just went, come here, young fella, everything's going to be okay. And he just turned the tide and and he was the figurehead, the spiritual. In every organisation, there is always that one person who is the real spiritual leader of that organisation. And a lot of the time it's not the founder and it's not the organisational leader. It's someone who has competency and credibility. And I was just lucky enough that we connected and I just learned, and my learning just took off.
Yeah.
And we just ran human sources together. He would have been 25, 30 years older than me. And I just learned, and that is a pivotal moment in probably my entire life, to be honest.
What do you think has put you in good stead to be open to that learning opportunity? And what about you do you think made this person go, I want to invest in him?
I think maybe in hindsight now reflecting, I was always authentically me. I've always been that way, and I think that's part of why I just stumble across these amazing opportunities along the way, because I'm open to them, because I'm authentically me. And I don't necessarily worry too much about what someone else thinks about who I am. It's just the fact, all I care about is showing up authentically, and then whatever happens from there happens.
So I know enough about the skills then that you've developed to know, and I know enough people who've operated in that space to know that many, if not most, once they learn these skills, start to behave in a way that's not authentically them.
Correct.
This is just true.
Correct.
How did you manage to not fall in that trap?
Because I knew who I was as a person. I've always known who I am as a person.
Why?
Because the way that I see the world and the way that I see challenges is I see the world as an opportunity for you to experience things and learn about yourself, whereas a lot of other people see challenges as in a negative light. Challenges allow me to figure out who I really am as a person.
Okay.
And so through everything we've spoken about, I just see them as a way of like getting to know me. And it's a positive challenge.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I like, they talk about people like breaking. Quite humbly, I just see life as an opportunity just to keep leveling up. Whatever the challenge, you just keep leveling up. Because you're either going to win or you're going to learn. And I think that's what that person saw.
You're either going to win or you're going to learn.
You never lose.
How do you justify that statement to people out there that's gone through enough adversity and tragedy to not feel that way? That's a very optimistic, very positive mindset, which is authentically you.
Yeah.
But it's not like that for everybody.
Yeah. That's fair. I think having come across people that have been through significant tragedy and dealt with some seriously awful things in their life, the main thread which joins all of them is they're unbelievably grateful. And that's how they come out of it with closure. It's such a deep, broad topic, but I think if you just have to accept that the life is a journey, and along the way, there are going to be hurdles, and you have to overcome those hurdles. And in everything you go through, there are lessons along the way.
In episode 5, Michaela Green, co-founder of MyTab, have this belter of a line where she says, they're called hurdles because you can get over them.
Yeah, I remember that. So I
love that. That just rings in my head all the time. Okay, cool. So you got taken under his wing and then you ran sources together.
Yeah.
At a high level, as much as you're able to.
Yeah, of course.
What's some really core skills that you developed there that you've taken forward?
Oh, wow.
I know that's too many to list. Give me the main.
Yeah, I think like at their most basic, it's just like being able to listen and understand and interpret what people are saying and really listening to what people are saying, like how they're saying it, the words they're choosing, and asking yourself why.
Okay.
And being inquisitive, I guess.
I want you to help me with an example for the listeners to get the value of what you're just saying right now. Because I've heard a lot of people say to really listen, but most people don't understand what that means and are not able to connect with what you can unlock when you do that.
Yeah, sure. So most people listen to what's being said so they can relate that back to themselves. And you see it with a lot of people who don't realize that they're selfishly doing this. They ask a question expecting that the other person will reciprocate and ask them a question about them, or they'll relate it back to themselves. 4 or 5 levels deep into active listening is this idea that I'm listening to what you're saying, but I'm using empathy to put myself in you and understand what you're saying, like at a much, much deeper level, because it's about connection. Does that make sense?
Yes. You basically brought it home with what's been the ultimate lesson for me in this discipline, and that's that empathy, right? It's the superpower, and it's incredibly hard to do. When you're listening to somebody, to genuinely, to the best of your ability, put yourself in their shoes and genuinely try to see the world or the moment from their vantage point is so difficult to do, truly. But it's incredibly powerful if you can pull it off. Now, when you ran sources, you would have worked with some great people and with some not so good people. And in your years as an investigator, same thing, right?
Yeah.
So now, how do you overcome a feeling you might have for somebody who might not be a good person in that moment, in your opinion, whatever, and then put yourself in their shoes and really listen with empathy? How do you get through that? Because most people can't do that.
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually. Because I think in the early days of your active listening, you do this thing where you make assumptions about people and you're trying to active listening, you're trying to be present, but the things that they say clash with what you think or what you believe. And my answer to that is, like, there is always something about someone that is likable. There's always something. Think about that.
I believe that.
Just think about that.
It's difficult for people to go find it and connect with it. And put aside the things that they don't like about that person.
Like, in the same way that I can sit down with someone who has gone and traveled to the Middle East and joined ISIS, which is abhorrent, and probably done some stuff that no one should ever have to even listen about. If you ask yourself why, and you break down what they're saying by asking questions, their worldview, and you do that empathetically, you don't have to agree with what they've done. But if you can understand why they've done something, that's no different to being able to actively listen and understand why someone is saying something. There's nothing stopping you from saying, what do you mean? Why do you think that? What's that about? How do you understand that? And most people will get to that point and they'll decide that that's conflictual and I'm going to be polite. Whereas really good leaders, what they do is they go, okay, there's something here. I don't understand that. It's a humble, empathetic, authentic, egoless exercise where you're inquisitive about why someone just said something. And you're willing to wade into the water of potentially being impolite. But if you have the communication skills to ask those questions in a non-violent, way which gets you like deep into the essence of why they're saying that, most of the time you can understand people.
It strikes me that you'd need a healthy dose of emotional intelligence and social intelligence to do that well. Or do you think anybody can do it?
I think everyone can learn it.
Can learn it?
Yeah.
Is it easy to learn?
No.
Does it come quick?
No, it takes a while.
Yeah. You think?
Because it's about practice.
Okay.
It's about making mistakes.
Yeah. Okay. What's one of the biggest mistakes you made doing this work?
Oof.
That you can talk about?
No, perfectly fine. I started getting results really early, and I thought it was because I was really good at what I did. What it was really about in the moment was that it was no longer about me, it was about them.
I know what you're saying, but please, if you can, give some context to what was going on there.
Yeah, of course. I think what your listeners need to understand is that, like, there comes a point in every leader's life where they realise that it's not about them, it's about everyone else around them. And that the process of being a leader becomes about enabling everyone else around you and just helping everyone else become the best version of themselves. And how does that relate to what I just said? Well, if I'm dealing with someone and we're in a relationship, a business relationship, which is what it really is at the end of the day, if it becomes all about them and we're aligned and our motivations are the same and we're headed in the same direction, you're going to get success. Like, there's no way you're not going to be successful in some way, shape or form. But it's no longer about me. Like, my ego and my drive to succeed and achieve and all that sort of stuff doesn't really matter. If you do all the things right along the way, that success comes.
So you dropped the relationship word there, which is what this is all about. And you've learned some lessons about building high-performing relationships, high performance in humans and in teams. What's sort of your biggest go-to or your biggest value add when you think about creating high performance in a relationship or in a group of people that have to work together?
Yeah, sure. So I think the hardest thing for people that we work with to understand is that whether they're business leaders or entrepreneurs or they're team leaders, businesses are actually, if you break them down, SQ Squared says they're actually just a bunch of relationships that you need to manage, run, leverage, navigate, and that there are these tools that you can use and skills that you can use to come to the party in a way which makes you a successful leader. So businesses are a series of relationships that you need to get very good at as a leader. And then on the other side of it, there are these two other parts. It's your behaviour and the other party's behaviour. And we work on all three parts. So we give you the tools to manage other people's behaviour. We shine a really big mirror for you to look at and go, because we ask you, we go, what do you want? What are your habits? What are your needs? Where are you headed? What are you doing at the moment? How are you going about it? What are examples you can give us? How can we measure it? And we say, okay, what is it that you want? Okay, if that's what you want, what are the relationships that are going to get you there? And we show you how to manage those relationships. And then we teach you the behaviours that you need. And we show you the behaviours of other people and how to influence, persuade, and negotiate with those behaviours to become the best leader you can be.
So you're talking about influencing, persuading, negotiating with yourself and your behaviours in order to be better at building high-performing relationships with other people's behaviours.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
How do you get people to move, to grow in their own behaviour? Because most of the time when leaders think about, I want to build a great business, I want to build a high-performing team, it's all about how do I get the most out of these people? And what you're saying is, first, figure out what you want, then how do you get the most out of your behaviour before you've got a shot at doing that well? So how do you get people to change their behaviour?
Yeah, great question. So a lot of the time, what's happening with people is that the things that got you to the point of being a leader, your operator abilities, are not going to be the things that make you a great leader. And we call that the operator trap.
Technician.
And everyone that I know, whether it was within law enforcement or within the business community, within the SME community, fall into this trap. I'm going to repeat it. The things that got you to the point of where you are as a leader are not going to be the things that are going to make you a great leader. Now, if you have the ability to self-reflect and identify the things that are the friction points, the things that are stopping other people from building a relationship with you, well, like we're a little bit further down the road than where we were when we first started. And there are these principles, credibility, consistency, reciprocity, trust, authenticity, unity. These are all the things that leaders need to be able to build really good relationships. Some of those relationships are within your own team, some of those relationships are with your peers, and some of them might be in the marketplace, right? Then it allows you the ability to build relationships with people in your private life, for example. And then once you've mastered the art of self-leadership, then we say, okay, all right, now you know who you are as a person and the things that you do well and the things that you don't do so well. Now let's work through what it means to coach other people, because that's what you're really doing as a leader. You're coaching other people's behaviours. And now that you can self-reflect on your own, well, these are the tools, the skills, your toolbox that you have, that you need to then create really high performing teams, and at the end of that, a culture of excellence.
Okay. There's another podcast episode right there. But I'm going to move us to, feels like a good time to talk about traversing mountains.
Sure.
Okay. Little pivot. So you said, I've always built my life around large challenges. My wife calls this traversing mountains one step at a time. What are some of the biggest mountains that you've traversed before we get to the Founders Mountain?
Yeah, sure. I think once I realized what I wanted to do with my career, like I knew I wanted to manage informants to the end. Like I would have done it till I was 60. I just found something that fitted so perfectly with me and who I was as a person and where I wanted to go, and I was motivated by it. I was like, I'm doing this. Now the tip top point, the Everest of that mountain, is doing that as a specialist, as a covert operative. And now that is the cream of the crop. So you've got to become a detective first. So you've got to go through all of that. You've got to do a couple of years being a detective in the suburbs, in the back streets of Mirrabooka, with Gabe and Mo.
Yep.
And you have to go back to the grind, which you did at the start of your career. And then you've got to go through a series of courses and experiences to even have a look in. That was my mountain.
So getting to your elite operator peak.
Yes.
Was big.
It was huge.
That was the Everest, yeah.
Yeah. And I think I learnt along that journey, for me, it was about understanding what it takes to be successful. Not only in that world, but how to be successful generally, the habits that I need to be able to be super successful.
Okay.
And I say that humbly, but it's true. Got to break old habits, got to climb that mountain, one step at a time. It's not guaranteed. But if I can do that, I'll potentially get to Everest base camp.
What kept you going? Because that wasn't an easy journey, but you got there.
Got there.
Yeah. What kept you going?
I really wanted to experience what it was like to be a master of a craft. I really wanted to master my craft. That's honestly what it was.
Okay. I mean, mastery is one of the three principal intrinsic motivators, illustrated in Dan Pink's work. The book Drive is a great example of that research. And you said before that you found the thing that you love that you would do until you're 60. And now how old are you today?
Just about to turn 40 in a couple of weeks.
About to turn 40 and you're not doing it anymore?
No.
Okay, so instead, you're on an entrepreneurial journey. Yeah. So what on earth has been a catalyst for you to take on this madness of founding your own business?
Because whilst I was doing that work, I had a moment where I was like I had I'd found my true potential, and I saw my potential runway, and I thought to myself, you know what, this could actually help a lot of other people. Like these skills in knowing how to navigate relationships with some really interesting people, whether it was in the counterterrorism world, the organised crime world, or later on the anti-corruption space. I now had a framework for learning how to deal with people and to get the most out of people. And I was like, you know what? This has some significant value for the business community.
No, I was just going to say, we early in the episode, we talked about a decision for safety and security and stability.
Yeah.
And here is the opposite to this. So you're leaving, or you're thinking about leaving safety, security, stability in terms of a career and pursuing something that's uncertain.
Definitely.
So it's got to be a big motivator for you to do that.
Yeah. And I think I just realized, like, I was very, very good at what I did because I genuinely cared for the person that I was working with. And in all of my relationships and all of my source handler relationships, I saw the impact that I could have on that person's life. And I was like, man, I can really help people here. That is no different for me. Yes, there's way more risk over here, and it's an entrepreneurial journey. But I was like, there's something definitely here. I can't put my finger on it right now, but it's there. And so I just started creating this framework.
So you've been working on this for a couple of years, and you've actually been running the business now for about a year or so, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I have insight into your journey, but I want you to give the listeners some unvetted access to what that last couple of years has been like for you.
Yeah.
Starting a business.
Sure. I realized that I needed to start a business because I never wanted to give another person an opportunity to inhibit my ability for growth. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. So I was in that world, I'd hit my peak, and I was ready to, I'd hit Everest Base Camp and everything was going really, really well. And then someone decided within that agency that they were going to shut down this unit. So someone who I didn't know made a decision. They essentially told me I couldn't do what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And I was like, I'm never going to let that happen ever again.
Okay.
That was the catalyst for starting my business.
You needed to create autonomy.
Yes, definitely.
Second principle of intrinsic motivation.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I promised myself I'd never let someone dictate the future and the future of my family based on essentially the swipe of a pen.
Mm-hmm.
That was the catalyst for starting my business.
Okay.
To answer your question, it's been mad. It's been crazy, and I've loved and hated every minute of it.
So let's go there. I want you to take us as exposed and as raw as you're willing to take us, because the thing is, so that's a big reason why this podcast even exists, is to tell the real stories of business owners, the real stories, not the unicorn stories that we hear out there that are the 0.1% of the truth, and not the business hacks. There's some wonderful business hacks podcasts, but I struggle to find really authentic stories about how rewarding and how bloody difficult it is to start and run and build your own business. So what's been brutally challenging and extraordinarily rewarding for you in the last couple of years or so?
Again, I think personally, and if you'd ask my wife, she would agree, it's the next mountain. It's agreeing to go on a journey where your final destination is not guaranteed. And the vulnerability that comes along with walking into a super competitive, fast-paced environment where it's really about for me, it's about taking my idea and turning it into a functioning business which helps people. And I've never done the bits in between. And that's really scary. I've done some pretty crazy stuff, but for me personally, it's probably been the most challenging thing I've ever done so far.
Okay. Those who know me know I'm a bit of a dreamer, i.e., oh, that sounds like a great idea, let's do that. And now I've done that a couple of times, and I've done the bits in between a couple of times and screwed a lot of them up. Get specific with me for those bits in between where you were and an idea, bringing it to life, and what you had to learn along the way and what you had to wrestle with and some of the thoughts. And
yeah, sure. I've always really struggled with imposter syndrome. And that has probably been the main issue for me, if I was to be completely honest. And it's really and it is just, I struggle with it a little bit as a COVID operative, but the way I dealt with it there was I was just going to get time at the crease and I was going to prove to myself that I would be able to do it. The difference between that space and this space is that in that space, you just follow the bouncing ball, do your time, and it's almost guaranteed that you're going to be okay. You're going to do it. In this space over here, there's no guarantees.
Uh-huh.
And I wrestle with that quite often. And I feel like, having listened to a few other podcasts, I reckon a lot of business owners feel the same way. Yeah, it's crazy.
I'm not going to let you off the hook. Get specific with me.
Sure. Okay.
Because, the other business owners out there, they struggle with the same stuff, but very few people have got the courage to talk about it.
Yeah.
And if you're willing, get specific about some of those dark moments, some of those challenges, some of those thoughts, some of those concerns. As you're learning to do this thing, as you're learning to put the pieces together to bring life to your idea. Yeah,
sure. I think for me, it's quite a lonely journey as well. Like, even though I've got a network of people who have potentially done it, and you're only a phone call away sometimes, it's a really lonely journey for me. Having come from an environment where it's about the group.
Team.
The team. It's about the team.
Team of elite operators, grab each other's back and pick each other up.
Definitely.
Now you're solo ranger.
Yeah. And I think what I'm trying to do, I genuinely believe, is not out there in the market. Like, I am creating it from scratch. There's no path. And I have to rely on my wits, my understanding of people, my limited knowledge of the business world, and learn on the job whilst I've got a young family as well. And so it's for the first time, I'm betting on myself. Mm-hmm. And that's scary.
Okay. So it's scary for you to back yourself in.
Even though your listeners might think I've backed myself in every single time in my life, it's now this completely different world that I'm trying to adapt to and learn about as I go, knowing full well that I've got something special. But there's no guarantee that, even if it's special, that it's going to work out.
Okay. So that's the thing that scares you.
One of the things, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
One off. What else? Is there something else that really stands out as a fear that you've got to stare in the face and overcome to pursue this dream?
I have no previous experience in the business world. Like, my parents weren't business owners. No one in my family has previously been a business owner. And that unknown and being very mindful of wanting to do things the right way. Because that's the other thing that I have in my personality, right? Is that I can sometimes be a perfectionist. I want to do things I want to tick every box and do everything exactly right. But in the business world, there's no one way. Mm. And so it's like, you can go anyway, but you don't know if that's the right way. It's just, you have to follow your gut and your instinct and learn and make mistakes along the way. Yeah. That's all. That's like, I think for people that go, I want to be an entrepreneur and I want to start a business, the day-to-day grind, the mental load of always thinking about, where's my next client going to come from? What's happening tomorrow? That is really hard, because I've come from stability and security, and now I have none of that. Okay. So you want to talk about a mountain, and you want me to be completely honest, that's the truth.
Sounds like a big mountain to climb. where it feels like for you this is a big mountain that you've embarked on, set your sights on?
Yeah, and you're doing it, and you're telling everyone that you're doing it. do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's like you're the guy on the stage, and you're and now I understand how actors feel.
Okay.
Because they're on a stage and everyone's watching them, or at least you think everyone's watching you.
Yeah.
Might not be the truth, but your brain's like, oh, I've said I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
And one of my values is like, if I'm going to say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do everything in my power to do it.
Okay. Talk to me about cognitive dissonance.
Which part? What would you like to know?
Your experience with cognitive dissonance through your founder's journey. Cognitive dissonance is a very important part of your skill set in the work that you've done.
Yep.
But I want to understand your experience, your personal cognitive dissonance on this journey. Well, first define in your definition what is cognitive dissonance, and then what experience, if any, have you had in the last year or so as you're bringing this idea to life?
Yeah, sure. I think at its most basic, the way I understand it in the current context is that it's when you're conducting behavior or you're doing something that doesn't fit with your values. And that's where the dissonance comes from. It's like a fork in the road.
Yeah.
And it's forced me to question my values. And one of them, the one that's probably been at the forefront of my mind, is this idea of stability. Because you don't get that as an entrepreneur. You can't have both. No, you can never have it. Like as a founder leader, I've got so much respect for entrepreneurs, founders, leaders, people that just go, you know what, I'm going to back myself and I'm going to have a red hot crack. Because all you see is the success stories. You see the unicorns. You see, like I said before, right? And now that you break it down into the day to day to day to day, I think the entrepreneurial journey, without segueing too much, the entrepreneurial journey for me is about just doing doing it every day, thinking about it every day. And that's the stuff that people don't talk about. Yeah. Does that make sense? I feel like I've gone off on a tangent here.
I think what would be powerful is just to maybe understand a practical moment.
Yeah.
For you when those feelings come. Let's take the value of stability, right?
Yeah.
So can you remember a moment in your journey? I mean, I'm pretty sure I got a text message at the time from you. Which is why I'm bringing it up.
So much has happened. There have been so many text messages. What are you talking about?
I know that you had a moment where you ran into that vibration of the dissonance where the world feels like it's shaking and you don't know, am I doing the right thing here, and what do I believe, and is this aligned with what I should be doing, and there's just question marks and a bit of a dark cloud, and then you got to figure out which direction is my way out.
What do I do?
Yeah, well, just talk through that moment and how you push through that.
Sure. I had a conversation with my wife and we spoke about what we're going to do with our daughter's education. And we had that conversation 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And I was like, yeah, no, she'll be fine. We'll send her to a private school. She's going to be fine. She's going to do really well. Both making really good money at the time. Everything's going to be fine, right? Because education is it's so important to me. And I didn't realize this at the time, but the way I see the world is that every generation that comes after the next generation is always better. That's how it's always been in my family. You set it up for the next generation, and your kids do better than what you did. And so education is fundamental to that. We then had that conversation 8-9 weeks ago. And it dawned on me that she might not be able to go to that private school, or that was no longer as clear and as comforting as what it was before, because I'm headed down this road and I don't know the final destination. And that just hit that value. I was like, oh wow, stability, education. I'm being selfish because I'm chasing my dream, and there's every chance that I'm going to go and take that cash that's sitting in that bank account, which we put in every fortnight, and I might have to use that for my business, for me. But I just told you what one of my values were, right? The next generation always does better than the one before it. So I had that moment where I was like, there are real consequences here. Because the other thing is...
Risk.
Yep. Yeah. Now, when I'm feeling like really good about it and things are going really well in the business, I'm like, she's going to be fine. She's going to go to a great school. She's going to have a great life. So there's like the seesaw, the roller coaster of being a business owner. I know we're being really raw here, and I just think it's the best way to be.
No, it's great. It's a perfect example because we often talk about the definition of an entrepreneur as somebody who has a vision, something they want to realize, and then have to make a decision to deploy capital in service of achieving that vision, whether it's financial capital, time capital, whatever. And in between connecting capital to vision is risk.
Yes.
And the people that's got the balls to take that on, that's typically what you see in entrepreneurs. And so now you had to be faced with that decision of, I'm risking the thing that I've said was a sure thing, my kid's education. I'm potentially risking that to realize a vision.
Absolutely.
Is that the right decision?
Yes.
How did you settle on a decision or a direction?
I'll just back myself. I think my vision is strong enough, and I think that everything's going to be okay.
Okay.
Because here's the thing. Can I share this bit with you? Yeah. The thing that lets me sleep well at night is, and I only figured this out a couple of weeks ago. I don't compare myself to anyone else. I now compare myself to where I've come from.
Yeah.
I look back.
Am I progressing?
Am I
making
headed in the right
meaningful
way?
progress?
Yeah. From the kid that jumped on a plane at 17 with $100 in his pocket to where I am now, and I'm eternally grateful. And I know that everything is going to be okay, because that is powerful.
Yeah.
So if everything has gone well up until this point, okay, there's always going to be a chance, man, that things might not work out. Like I think your guest Alex said it. It's like most startups fail. It's true. But yet here we are as entrepreneurs, and we're willing to have a crack and take that risk on, because the upside is astronomical and the downside is to zero. Well, I'm not that far from zero, so I might as well just. Do you know what I mean?
I'm not that far from zero. That's awesome.
Like that's the truth.
So when I work with people who are struggling to make a decision, to take risk to achieve something they want, I'll ask them the worst case scenario thing.
Yeah.
So if this happens, is the world going to stop spinning tomorrow? Answer is usually no. So okay, well, the world's spinning, sun's coming up and down, you've got breath, you can rebuild.
Absolutely.
How far are you from zero, like you said? And so is it worth the risk to go and get that thing that you passionately believe in, that thing that you have connected to as far as a purpose is concerned? Purpose, by the way, the third of the three intrinsic motivators: autonomy, mastery, purpose.
So can we talk about purpose for a second? Oh,
please.
I don't want to hijack your
podcast.
We'll
do purpose. I've got one more question and then we're going to wrap up.
Okay, sure. So every time I used to go away on holiday, prior to starting SQ2, I'd have that moment where I'm on holiday. You got nothing else to think about. You're trying to relax, have a good time. And this thing would happen to me where I'd be like, no, there's something missing. I'm not fulfilled here. And it would drive me and my wife nuts. Even my kid would be like, Dad, can you just go and do a workout?
You just like relax.
Yeah. Okay. But I was like, okay, there's something here. What is it? I can't figure it out. I just spent 5 days in Bali with my family and I didn't have that for a moment.
Because
I've got purpose.
And it is
SQ2 and helping people.
Okay. I want to read this line, which you wrote, and it deals with the balance between being uniquely capable yet unbelievably unprepared
Yeah.
for what you've taken on.
Yeah.
Can you?
I don't know, I think you said it to me once and it's just etched in my brain. Uniquely capable in the skills, I think as entrepreneurs and that vision and that purpose that you have, you're like, man, I have these unique skills that I know have worked for me time and time and time again, and I'm really comfortable and centered in the person that I am. But I'm about to wade into some water that I don't know, I've never waded into before. And that just, I think as an entrepreneur, that is exciting, yet so unbelievably terrifying. And I think we probably need to have more conversations about that. And I don't think that happens as often as what it should, which I'm guessing is why, one of the reasons why I got this podcast, right?
Yeah.
And I think on that topic, every time I listen to your podcast, I always think, oh my God, people are going through the same thing.
Yep.
It is. It feels like a warm hug sometimes because you're like, I'm so lonely.
Hamish, I've just recently interviewed him. His episode is about to air. He comes to some of our owner leader forums and he fondly talks about it's like a therapy session for owners.
So true.
Or a warm hug as well. And a very big reason for the podcast is to let other SME owners out there know that you're not alone.
Yeah.
Me included, we're all going through the same thing. And on this topic of being unbelievably unprepared for what you've taken on, every time when I've ever started a business which has failed or which I've had to close or whatever, and there's been a few, and I have that moment of micro depression. Oh, shit. The one thing that pulls me up is to go and look at other people who've had extraordinary success and have achieved extraordinary impact. And if you look at their history, they've failed many more times than I have. And every next time they've learned and become more and more prepared. Yes. And it's my belief that you cannot be fully prepared for this journey. You just need to do it, feel the pain, learn, grow, keep learning, keep growing, and just be open to benefiting from other people's wisdom who've been there. Not be too proud to learn from other people's mistakes. I'm one of those people that have to make my own cock-ups. I wish I wasn't like that, but there is a real opportunity to not make the mistakes others have if you've just got the mindset to listen and try. And I think it's what's so valuable about what you've shared with us today is some of those challenges that you have come up against and how you've tried to deal with them, and having the courage to vulnerably share the feelings and the emotions and the impact when you have to make decisions over your family's future, and letting others know that you're not alone and there's ways to get over these hurdles. I'm very, very grateful.
Pleasure, absolute pleasure. Pleasure's all mine.
You've got a long journey ahead of you as a founder, no doubt. But in the time that you've had, is there one lesson that you would pass on to any other founders who are thinking about taking on this madness, or who are in the thick of it right now? Specifically when thinking about building a resilient business, a business that will be around for the long term to do good for their community for the long term.
Yeah, I do. At least I think it's good advice. I would say think about vision, purpose, values from the very beginning. You might have a really good business idea, but like setting up that pyramid with a really strong base has helped me deal with all of those challenges that we just spoke about. Because when push comes to shove, I think to myself, no, I've got a solid foundation, and I know I've got a solid idea, and I know where I'm headed, and I can deal with anything else. The other part to that solid foundation includes a network of people that help me, whether it's you or other people, or, I've got like a really strong network of really positive people who have experienced a lot in life, and a partner who I'm unbelievably grateful for. So if you're going to do this, do it right. Make sure you've got a solid base. Have a conversation with your wife about it. Make sure that, the money that's sitting in that bank account, you're not just going to take out without her knowing about it, and just have a crack.
I say that entrepreneurship is a team sport.
Definitely.
If you have a life partner, they are in it as much as you, and you need to make sure that they are keen to play this game with you.
Absolutely.
Because it gets a lot harder if you don't have that backing and that support.
Completely agree.
Mo, thank you. We could be doing this for a few more hours. I have a sneaking suspicion there'll be more, but grateful for you to share your journey, what you've learned, taking the time to be here, to feedback on the podcast, very grateful. Watch what you are continuing to do in the world for SMEs with great excitement. And just thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, my man. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.